guys, welcome to episode 2 of the budget Scrambler build. Last time we went and picked up the bike and we managed to get it running. Today we're going to see about putting on a pair of handlebars so that I can move it around the workshop a little bit easier, and then we're going to go about detabbing the rear of the frame and checking over the rust. So if you remember last time when we picked up the bike, it actually came with clip-on handlebars. Because we're going to be making this a scrambler, we need a higher set of bars, which means we're going to need risers. Unfortunately, this bolt that mounts the risers has actually snapped off in the fork crown. So what we're going to do is attempt to remove that by welding this nut on top here. So I'm going to clean it off and then we'll MIG that on there, leave the heat to penetrate, and then we should be able to work it out with a spanner. This top crown is made of aluminium and the bolt is made of steel, so when they corrode they tend to fuse together and they can be really hard to get apart, hence why it's snapped. Okay, why am I not standing here with a stud extracted and holes ready for a riser to go in? Well, I'll tell you why. Because after 4 attempts, I've actually ended up snapping the stud off even further in there. So what I'm going to have to do next is center punch the remaining part of the stud and drill it out. I'll go up in several sizes of drill bit until hopefully I can just skim it out of the thread. So I finally managed to remove this stud here. Next up I've got these yokes here, which came off of a Z400. They're the same 2-bolt fitting, so hopefully the spacing works. To test that, I've actually got to remove this little unit here. So I'm going to remove that and see whether this will fit as is, or whether I'm going to have to modify either the risers or the yoke for them to pair. On just hovering this over, I can see that because of this middle section here, it's not going to fit. So what I'm going to do now is take a fresh blade on the angle grinder and just skim out this middle section and shape it nicely. Then we'll try and get them bolted on. So I've managed to get one riser fitted. What I had to do that was drill these out just to a slightly larger diameter. So I'm going to do that for this side, pop the other one on, and then I should be able to fit the handlebars. Right, so handlebar risers are on, and next I'm going to be fitting the handlebars and transferring the controls from the old clip-ons. This is quite exciting because this is the first modification we'll have done to make this more of a scrambler, as opposed to just get it running. think we're at a point now where I should do a little mock-up, so I'm going to grab the seat and I'm going to grab the mudguard and set it up just so that I can see what direction the project's going to head in. Now I can see a little bit better what direction I'm going to take this in, and I'm pretty pleased with that so far. I'm going to be putting in a frame loop with a slight kick up at the back, so that's why I've left the seat hovering up a little bit higher. But I'm really pleased so far and I think it's going to look great. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move all this wiring out of the way, then take the angle grinder and a wire wheel to strip off this paint and inspect the rust. I'm also going to take off any tabs that I'm not going to be using. Okay, so I've been round and detabbed most of the rear section of the frame, and then I've stripped off the rust using a wire wheel on the angle grinder and checked it to see if it's structurally sound, which it is. So that's great because that means that I can order a frame loop, and then next time I can start welding that on the back. I'm going to move my attention forwards and start working on mounting the front mudguard. Fortunately, this lower crown is actually made of steel. So what I'm going to do is make up some small mounts and then weld them onto the fork crown, and we should be able to mount it that way. So ideally what I'd like to do is use these original mounting points here. As there are no spare points to mount on the fork, what I'll actually be doing is hollowing out this scrap piece of metal and tapping a thread so that it takes this Allen bolt. After that I should be able to tack it onto the front of the forks, and we can play around with it until we get our final position. Okay, so I've managed to make these brackets and I've got them bolted on. Next up, what I'm going to do is strip the paint off of the fork crown down here so it's ready for welding. I'm going to clamp this to where I want it to be and tack it. After tacking, I'll remove the clamp, stand back, chuck it to where I want it to be, and then I'll do the final welding. Okay, so that's the mudguard on. It's super stable and I'm really pleased with it. Unfortunately, the wide angle lens is making it look like it points up a little bit more than it actually does, but it looks bang on in real life. So the next thing that I have to do is cut this down, because on turning at the moment it fouls on the exhaust. So yeah, we'll go ahead, take that off, cut it down and put it back on. But this is great because it looks far more like a Scrambler now than it did when we picked it up, and I can really see it coming together now, so I'll be excited to get the frame loop and get that on. So that's the front mudguard all sorted, and that wraps us up for today's episode. Next time, hopefully I'll have a frame loop and we can start fabricating that on there.